First Presbyterian Church of Allegan was founded in April of 1836, a year before Michigan became a state. The congregation worships in a historic 1875 Romanesque revival building. Many of the founders of the city of Allegan worshipped in this church. Bank presidents, Allegan city council members, and other movers and shakers of the region used to have their membership here. But in the spring of 2010, when I came, the doors of the building were often locked. There just wasn't a whole lot going on. From the street, it seemed that everything had been pared down to a bare minimum. Sunday worship at 10:30 and then recovery on Mondays at 10 a.m. AA struggled on with their usual slot on Wednesday nights at 8. Attending worship at Allegan First were a faithful group of about 30 people. Word on the street was that the congregation at the Presbyterian Church was old and dying. There were no kids there anymore. But the congregation had done the work, and they had taken a good, hard, long look at themselves, and they had prayed a lot about it. And they were ready. They were ready to try anything. They really were truly open to God doing a brand new thing among them. 40 pastors have served in the history of First Presbyterian of Allegan, and in April 2010, I came as pastor number 41. I was to be a part-time, 2-year, open search designated pastor, and I was living in Granville, not Allegan. But even with all of these factors, all of us were committed to giving this congregation all that we had, and all of us also acknowledged that if anything new was going to happen from our efforts, that it was going to have to be God that would do it. But within my first 2 weeks, things started to happen. The women were inspired to clean the junk out of the nursery and the Sunday school rooms. Even though it was May, we restarted Sunday school with our one student, my daughter Elisa, who was in 4th grade. On the signboard, we rephrased the way we referred to the recovery group so it wasn't quite so silly. And we mentioned the small line dancing group that met at the church on Tuesdays. And then I created a simple website that we could list on the signboard. We were all getting ready for a new way of being a church. While First Allegan was still having their jazz worship service once a month, it was the best-kept secret in town. Most people in Allegan didn't know whether the church was still having those jazz worship services. So we made up posters and we plastered them all throughout downtown. Splicing my installation service with the jazz worship service in June announced to the town that God was moving and doing something brand new at First Presbyterian. And Allegan started to notice. The summer of 2010 saw some staffing changes. Mindy Thompson became the church secretary and brought us some more computer and accounting skills, and our new custodian, Marlon Fry, started on the many deferred building maintenance projects, and he created a whole new growing look by adding landscaping. Those plants changed the whole feel of the place, making it more interesting and inviting to both butterflies and people. The summer and fall of 2010, we started having monthly youth group activities. We kicked off youth group with a big, all-expense-paid trip to Michigan Adventure in August. Art Prize was another destination trip for us in October of 2010. You see, no one is excluded from our youth group, even though the curriculum is targeted toward high schoolers. Our youth ages range from the upper elementary through college, and everyone is welcome to bring their friends. We've topped off 2010 with a trip to Craig's Cruisers in December. Youth group activities continued with some fun service projects in addition to the expensive field trips. Relationships between the kids began to form. The youth made valentines for servicemen and women. With a contact we made through the American Legion, we obtained an address for a unit in Iraq that had some Allegan folks in it. We sent them over 75 handmade cards. Not everything went smoothly all the time. Some of the challenges that we faced as a congregation were in trying to integrate the former members with the new people who were coming in. Working together on a common project was often a very helpful strategy, as well as just making some time to hang out together and get to know each other better. We discovered that while we are a very diverse congregation, both large and small, we are all committed to Christ and to making a difference in the Allegan community.
Another one of our problems was the name, jazz worship. People either didn't like jazz or said that they had already been to worship in the morning. One day while driving to Allegan, I was praying about this, and I was suddenly inspired with a great idea. What if we called jazz worship a benefit concert and took up an offering for a local nonprofit? 90% of the offering could go to the nonprofit, while 10% could stay for more benefit concerts. People loved the idea. Soon nonprofits were thinking up ways that they could promote our benefit concerts. One of the big ways that God is doing a new thing at Allegan is by increasing our spirit of inclusivity and celebration. For Woody Gibson's 95th birthday, we brought him a cake right in the nursing home. And for our youngest members at our church picnic, we didn't forget about them, but we had a nickel hunt in a pool of birdseed. Even for our members that have developmental challenges, we include them right along with the rest of the congregation in our worship and in our activities. This same spirit of care, inclusion, and community is what led us to continue on our community lunches after Lent 2011. We're now getting between 40 and 75 people each week in our fellowship hall for meal and a time of celebration.
Oh, you're going to do it, then? Okay.
Also in 2011, we launched a new program where developmentally challenged folks from the community can learn job skills by working alongside us. While we've had several people come through the program, Stephen has stayed with us. He's a key volunteer every week for the community lunch, and he handles the tray and the dish return window and the recycling better than anyone else does. The newest thing that God is doing in our midst is the launching of an ecumenical youth group this past February. We are partnering with the Episcopalians and Lutherans and a local guitar teacher, and we've got a new ecumenical youth group called Young Organization Under the Highest. This group now meets every week instead of once a month. The youth have their own youth band, a lesson, a game, an activity, and dinner together every week. Plans are in the works for service projects and combined mission trips. At a recent youth meeting, about 20 youth showed up. This is our largest youth gathering to date, and hopefully is an indicator of good things to come. So as we celebrate the ending of Lent 2012, we as a church know that it is God that is making these changes happen. God is doing a new thing at First Presbyterian Church of Allegan. If we can simply have the courage and the dedication to follow and to be God's disciples. On Maundy Thursday, we had a Seder dinner, and as I looked around the room, I realized that this is a much different congregation than the one I came to 2 years ago. There are now youth and children running around. Now there's a sense of purpose as we reach out in our mission to love and care for the community. There's education going on. People are growing in their faith and understanding, and there are hearts that truly love God and worship God with all that they are. There is a lot going on. But in case we ever forget how this is happening, we just need to look at the steeple. It doesn't point at the pastor. It doesn't point at any people at all. Our steeple points straight up, directing our hearts and minds to God's purposes and to God's leading. Yes, God is doing a new thing at First Presbyterian Church of Allegan. If we love God with all we've got, if we love our neighbors and love ourselves equally well, we are letting that love of God transform us. And that light of God's love is shining in through the doors and windows of this 175-year-old church, and it's making all things look brand new all over again. But that's what our God does. We need to remember that the story of Jesus is a story of death and resurrection. And First Presbyterian Church of Allegan just has the privilege of being a living example of that resurrection. We have the privilege of being Christ's disciples, and we are not to be afraid, but to go out and to tell the good news of this radical love of Christ. We, as God's ambassadors, are in the business of making all things new. So be it.